You see these ladies right here? Well, they don't want me. And well, they don't want you either. If you like to go on cruises, it seems like the anti-cruise sentiment is on the rise, and the anti-cruise protesters are doing wackier and wackier things. Things including glue and chains and squirt guns. What should our response be as cruisers? Cruise protest. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lita Loga. I am your host, Tony, here to guide you through the cruise wilderness. Hopefully, we won't be lost there for 40 years trying to figure out what to do about these cruise protesters. But the stories about the cruise protesters are getting wackier and wackier. It seems like in cities all around the world, the locals are rising up with an anti-cruise and anti-tourism sentiment. The ladies I showed you at the beginning, part of a throng of people in Barcelona that took to the streets with squirt guns to squirt whatever was in the squirt guns onto tourists or people that they identified as tourists. I was watching a report on Inside Edition, and there were people just randomly shooting water guns at people sitting in cafes until those people got up and moved on. The squirt gun antics were part of a broader anti-tourism protest where many locals took to the street and protested all forms of tourism, including cruise ship tourism. Now, in this Barcelona incident, I would say no big deal, really. Of course, if you were on the streets, you could have been impacted. You could have got squirt with a water gun, that kind of thing, which I think would infuriate most of us. These next set of people that are dealing with cruise protesters got impacted in a big way. This happened just a few days ago in Amsterdam, where anti-cruise protesters showed up at 3 a.m. to one of the integral bridges there in Amsterdam, a bridge that a cruise ship had to pass through around 6 a.m. And using glues and chains and locks, they affixed themselves to the bridge so that it could not be opened for the cruise ship. Part of the locking system there for cruise ships to get in and out of Amsterdam. And victimized by this protest was Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas. Now, port authorities called the police, and the police showed up and said, look, they're peacefully protesting. There's nothing we can do about it. So sorry. And the Jewel of the Seas had to reroute, had to take its passengers to another dock because there were a lot of people that needed to get to the airport. They had to spend the money to get 80 buses to bus people from 45 miles away from where they were supposed to be to their destination, whether it be the airport or somewhere else in Amsterdam. And so this protest, not only did it impact the scheduling of the cruise ship, stop the cruise ship, which is what they wanted to do, but it also ended up being a big financial burden on Royal Caribbean. And so I guess the original protest worked so well that they went back again. This time the next day on August the 11th, they affixed themselves to the same bridge lock system area, and they stopped the progress of the Seven Seas Mariner. Now, this time when the Port Authority called the police did remove the protesters, and the Seven Seas Mariner was able to make it to its port of call, delayed by a few hours. It does seem like these stories about cruise protests are increasing. Seems like we're getting more and more of them, but most of the time, just from a practical perspective, I don't really think about the people that are in those local areas protesting. I work under the assumption that if the governments in those areas have cleared those ports of call to allow cruise ships and to allow tourism, then that should be okay for me. It's up to, the government there to work with their local constituency, to determine what's best for those cities. Again, I'm not going to be able to delve into the city politics of every place that I go. And again, I assume if it's on the cruise itinerary and those cruise ports have been cleared by the governments there to accept tourists, then that's okay. You can spend some time pondering it. If there's people in those locations making an appeal saying that tourism is ruining their city, maybe not. I don't know. Again, a lot of times I see that, people protest about a lot of things, and these protests either turn into a big movement that does affect change into a city, or it's just a small minority. But I do try to keep an open mind about this. I know certainly when I was walking around Nanatorlik in Greenland, a very small fishing village there, and I saw people that live there, I did think, well, are these folks annoyed that we're in their little city for the day, wandering around? There weren't a lot of businesses that were even open for tourism. A lot of that was just like the tours to the glaciers and to the icebergs. That seemed to be the big crux of the business in Nanator. Like, you know, there were moments where I was like, do these folks even want us to be here? And is that even something that we should ponder as cruisers? I've heard a lot of different sides to this thing. Certainly, I've heard people say that if there's a city out there that's actively saying, we don't want you to come visit, then hey, maybe we shouldn't come visit. But again, how loud does that voice have to be? How big of the local group, how big does that group have to be so that they can effectively speak for the city? If you're in a city of 1,008 people are saying don't come to our city, is that dissenting voice really the voice of the city? I've said it before, there's so many things that we get challenged to process through as cruisers. We get challenged about labor laws, our cruise ships treating their workers well. Like a lot of other vacation types, you don't think about that. We get challenged with, do the places that you're going, do they want you there? We get challenged with, is cruising real travel anyways if you're not actually, incorporating yourself and immersing yourself in the culture, you're just doing a drive-by. Is cruising real travel? I wish I could shut my brain off sometimes, and maybe folks don't think about all of these things, but I end up thinking about all of these things. And when thinking about all these things, the final thing for me is I still think cruising is one of the best ways for people to travel. It's a real easy way for people to travel, to go out and see the world, and I continue to advocate for it that way. But at the same time, how do I incorporate my sensitivities to the human condition, to people that may not want you there, to people that are working to give us a vacation? I'm probably making it more complicated than it is. And I guess another aspect about the more recent instances of anti-tourism protest and sentiment, I guess, is exposure. I feel like probably throughout history, there's always been a sentiment of people in a locale not wanting outsiders to come in. Certainly, if we think about environmental concerns, my whole life, that I've had, awareness, I've always been aware that there are people that have been advocating for the environment, that, they're challenged by the way that human beings treat the environment. So that's always been there, but certainly with the advent of technology and the, social media, we do get more exposure to these dissenting voices or these protesting voices. And does the fact that we get more of it, does that influence us at all? Again, it's a lot of stuff to reflect on and to think about. It's a great conversation for people that love cruising, the people in a cruising community. I would love to leave a question for you in the pinned comment. If you can answer, I would love to get your feedback. Does people protesting against tourism, does people protesting against cruising, does that make you less inclined to want to go to the place where the protesters are? Big thanks for checking out today's episode. Please subscribe for more. Hit that like button on your way out. This is Tony for La Lido Loca. Until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.